Hey, everybody. Welcome to the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Hey, what we do on this podcast is talk about what B2B sales and marketing leaders, operators, and experts are doing today to really break through and grow their businesses at exponential levels. Let's get it in the interview. At the end, I'll give you an update on my courses, and you can check out my website at b2brevenue.com, and it's Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn. Hey, Greg, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate being here. It's exciting. Little background on myself. Let's see. I'm a father of two. I got a 4-year-old girl and a 1-year-old boy. I love kiteboarding, and I got into creating my own online courses about 2005. So what's that, 15 years ago? And that slowly over time, originally it was just a part-time project, but then led to eventually creating Thinkific as a platform to make it easier for others to do what I was doing, which is creating and selling my own online courses.
And what type of courses were you selling?
Originally, I got into the LSAT. So I was actually teaching LSAT classes in person at my university just as a part-time gig to pay law school tuition, and put together a blog and then eventually online LSAT courses.
Cool. And you were a lawyer too, weren't you?
I did, yeah. So I went on to practice law for a few years. And then eventually my LSAT class was actually, just as this part-time gig started doing more revenue than my legal career. A legal career was great, loving it, and it was going super well. But then piled on top of that was not so much the success of my own course. It was really all the people reaching out to me saying, I want to do what you've done. Can you help me do that? That really created that incentive to jump and create Thinkific.
Yeah. And what makes you think online courses are so popular now?
There's so many amazing trends going, like huge macro forces going on in the world that is really driving this. So one is really a piece of the changing nature of work, and so much going on with the way that people see their careers, how quickly they need to level up, how quickly we actually change careers. I went to business school, and then I went to law school, and now I'm running a software company. And in between, I've done everything from paper routes to car rental and outdoor advertising. So, and I think, the next generation is even more fluid in their careers. And so people are constantly looking for new skills and ways to level themselves up. I think that's on the career side. I think the personal improvement side, there is a ton going on there of people looking for new ways to improve personally. And so this, combined with the overall acceptance of online education, so companies like Udemy and Masterclass and all of these others are really popularizing the idea of online courses, and of course, lots of Thinkific customers. And so I see across all sorts of demographics, people really treating education online as their go-to first place of contact for learning. So rather than, even if you're an empty nester thinking about taking up a new craft, whereas you might look at going back to school at the community college in September, now people are just hopping online on the weekend and picking up the new craft over the course of the weekend.
That's it. I remember I went to college at night, and it was like so inconvenient to have to, in Boston, drive to a course at 6 p.m. after working a full day and basically just listen to somebody. It wasn't very interactive. And I go, boy, that would have been a whole lot easier if it was just online. I could sit at home on my couch and play it and just cover it.
Yeah. And I still think there's lots of places for that in-person thing. But what I like to see is that flipped classroom model where you have someone talk at you online, you do some interaction online, and then if you're going to do the in-present stuff, because I don't think universities are going rapidly towards extinction or anything. But what I'd love to see is more of this idea of get the lecture in your time online and then show up for the in-person interaction, the stuff that is great to have in person. But we don't need to go sit in a lecture hall across town and ruin the environment driving our cars and spend half an hour getting there to sit and consume something that we could get through video online.
And you didn't see anything else out of the market when you started the company?
When I was building my own course, we didn't see anything that worked well. We tried a whole bunch of different things, Moodle, Drupal, Joomla, WordPress, custom sites, building things like hacking together PayPal and a bunch of plugins. We looked around, we saw a few sort of early marketplaces getting started, but I really didn't want to put my stuff into a marketplace because I wanted it to be my business, my brand, my data, my customers, and who knew if they'd be around in the future. And then I was very tied to them. So yeah, at the time there was really nothing out there. Now there's obviously we have lots of competitors now in the space, but when we were getting started, there was really nothing else out there that made it super easy to go and create and launch your own online course.
Now, as a lawyer, did you know how to code?
I did not. I tried. So I took a few courses. I took some online courses. I took one on, at one point, Rails for Zombies, and which is like using Ruby on Rails to build Twitter for zombies. I took a few other code school, code academy type stuff. I actually went back to, and that worked to some extent. And then I went back to school and took a year or two of coding, just, those night classes part-time, and learned a fair amount. I was able to create web apps. But at the end of all this, my brother, who was the one doing the actual coding, so he never let me into the code. He's like, you're dangerous. You go build your own practice apps, but I'm building the real application. And at the end of a year or two of me messing around with this, he said, Greg, you're good at a bunch of things, and you could be a good programmer, but if that's not going to be your one all-in thing, then just stop wasting your time and do the stuff you're good at, like marketing and running the business and other things like that. So I took his advice, and he's given me a lot of good advice. We did actually raise some funds. So early days, we bootstrapped. I put a little bit of my own money in. My brother did as well. We actually funded a lot of it through the sales of my online course, and borrowed a little, or got a tiny bit from friends and family. But then we did actually raise about 2.6 million, and we've brought in another couple million recently. But the nice thing is, really, we've always been financed via customer revenue. So any of the money I've raised from investors, we've basically stuck in the bank as a backstop, because I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to lay people off because of poor planning on my part, or not be able to kind of fulfill all the needs we have for our customers because of poor planning and financial management. So I'm super conservative on the financial side. So our business is run entirely on profitable revenue from customers using our product, like I think most businesses should be. We have raised a bit, and I've really just stuck that as a bunch of extra oxygen canisters to keep us above the death line.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how about as far as like growing? I mean, because usually these technology companies, it's like a race, and it usually slims down to about 3.
Yeah.
And, and everybody copies each other's website features and funding model.
Yeah.
So how do you view that? Do you not care, or do you just say, you picked your niche and you're going to own that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's healthy to take a look at the competition sometimes, see where they're going, and get an idea of that kind of stuff. There's a nice quote, I don't remember where I heard it, but it's, comparison is the death of joy. And
that's true.
I certainly experienced that 1 or 2 times of just going through the someone's copying us again for this or something like that. And so I've stopped looking at it that way. I look now largely outside of our direct competitive industry to people who are trend-setting and innovative and industry leaders in other industries, to see what we can learn from them as to how we can really leap farther ahead. I think if you look at your competition, especially in our market where we're all sort of comparable size, and you're not learning as much. So I'm looking outside of that to the really innovative people and people who are much farther ahead of us in different industries to see what we can draw into education and e-commerce for education. And that seems to be working well. And then the other piece is we've really dialed in quite clearly who we're operating for, how we want to help people, what we want to be really amazing at, and it's working. And so we're just going to stay super focused on that. And I think naturally over time, what I'm already seeing is people who used to be closer to us in their offering are starting to kind of deviate and go their own way, and we're going our own way.
Yeah. Because that's it. I think certainly in your space, it'd be easy to start chasing the shiny object.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, because I know the space pretty well. I was with an alternative before I went with you guys. And I mean, yours was so much easier. But I looked out there and there was a lot of different things, but they weren't easy to use. And I didn't know how well they'd grow. And I wanted something very simple for my perspective and my clients.
Yeah.
And how do you stick with that? How do you not, because I'm sure you get a pile of requests every day, right? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you integrate with this? And
Yeah. I mean, okay, so there's sticking with the strategy, and then there's the pilot request. The pilot request, so we've just, I think I heard a quote, we were doing a retrospective on the last 12 months yesterday, and I think we've assembled like 4,000 or 5,000 insights and requests from customers since maybe just since March or something like that. So every piece of information that and a request that comes in from a customer saying, why don't you do this or that, or build this or integrate with this, we assemble, and we've got about 4,000 or 5,000 of them that have come in the last few months. And then we look at that, we categorize them, and we try and, rather than just do the one thing that somebody asked for, sometimes we do that. Really what we look for is like, what's the theme here? Are people really unhappy with our quiz and survey engine? And there's a lot of requests, and maybe we need to make time this year to sort of rebuild that and do it in a much better way. That kind of thing is how we look at that, and looking for the trends and the pockets where we can really make a difference, and also how that aligns with our overall strategy. So we definitely do respond to customer feedback and then build things that people are looking for and help solve problems. But we really try and focus on, what's your actual goal? Like our whole goal is to make our customers successful. So we really try and look at what's the goal and what's going to make you successful. So how can we solve that problem, as opposed to just fix this button for me or make this thing operate the way I want? Because what we see a lot of is the request from a customer is sort of a very specific individual need that them and maybe 5 other people need. Yeah. But if we can extract that into the actual problem and where they want to get with it, we can not only solve their problem, but we can solve it for 5,000 other people.
And how about as far as geography? Have you kept everybody in Vancouver, or is it distributed?
Mostly all in Vancouver. So we're all in one office here. It's about 21,000 square feet. We've got 90 people. We're hiring really quickly right now. So about 90 people. I knew the exact number last week, but I think about 90 people. We've opened up one office remotely, and we have a couple people working remote, but everyone who's working remote is either we've hired them, they're in another country, and we're working on the visa to bring them to Canada, which for us usually only takes about 6 weeks. And or they worked in the office in Vancouver, and for some reason they wanted to go live abroad and work remote, but it's a pretty small portion right now. Actually, there's a couple people in Eastern Canada on the East Coast now to help extend our sort of support coverage hours that are working remotely as well.
And what do you see as your main obstacle in growth?
Main obstacles in growth. They're all good ones. So, I mean, one, right now I'm looking for a lot more talented people to fill roles. I mean, all those thousands of feature requests that come in, we want to be able to solve all those problems. But, my engineering team is only about 40 people. So we're trying to grow that, which means finding great people. And really the limitation there is how quickly can we find, interview, hire, and onboard those people. So that's one limiting factor there. We've invested a lot over the last couple of years in our server infrastructure and architecture. That I'd say 2 years ago, that was a limiting factor. If we brought on too many people too fast or too many big launches, we could have issues with the servers. Now we've really invested massively in that, and we continue to do so. So it won't be an issue in the future. But those are some of the kind of things that we've bumped up against. The nice thing is we're not bumping up against growth limitations in the marketplace. So we have great product market fit, and we have a massive market that's really pulling us in the right direction, as opposed to it's not particularly difficult to go out and find new people who want to use our service and create their own courses.
Yeah. And the market in Vancouver is pretty tight for engineers.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Amazon here, Facebook, Asana just opened an office. Yeah. Microsoft is here, and they're hiring rapidly. Tons of other tech companies as well, Hootsuite. So it's it's certainly getting more and more competitive here. And of course, real estate prices. I mean, if you want to get a little 1-bedroom apartment, you're looking at least $1 million. So all of that adds up to make it's
tough.
It's tough.
Yeah.
But we're lucky in that we have I think our core team has done an amazing job of creating a brand around our culture. They've created an amazing culture, and now they're doing a good job of putting the word out about what our culture is actually like. So we're actually finding we're getting thousands of applicants. I think we hire less than 2% of the people who apply. So we have a really nice influx of applicants now because of the amount we've invested in building a really awesome culture. Plus, it just makes it more fun to come to work.
And you raised the C word, culture. I mean, how important is that to you, and what is it? And think of it.
People, team, and culture are at the absolute top of our sort of goal list every year. That's really one of the most important things. I mean, for me, everything comes down to people, whether that's helping our customers and helping them achieve their success and solving their problems, or helping our team and employees and helping solve their problems and achieve their success in terms of career aspirations and goals. That's really what all of this comes down to. And then even helping our customers help the people they interact with, which is their students. So team and culture is absolutely pivotal for us. And for me, it comes down to making sure people are, first, they're feeling safe, they're feeling included, and they're feeling welcome, no matter who they are. Then that they're feeling happy to be there, that sort of their needs are met, to be able to do a good job and come to work inspired and motivated. And then that next level of inspiration and motivation, that they're excited to be doing the work that they're in, partly because they're inspired by our mission and partly because they're inspired by the career path that we're working with them to create. So I find if we create all of that for people, then you've got a super happy team who's driving hard to everybody driving hard to the same goal.
And how do you maintain that as you're growing so fast? And this is your first CEO job, right?
It is, yes. Yeah. Well, no, actually, technically I was a co-founder of another company and I was CEO of my online course company, but that was just me and my brother. So yeah this is the first. I'm learning day by day. I spend a ton of time studying. One of our core values is learn and grow. So I invest a ton of time studying and trying to figure out what the next iteration of me needs to be to meet the needs of my team. I make a lot of mistakes and then I disclose those to the team and we talk about how I can do a better job next time, as everyone here does. So but creating the culture specifically, one thing, the biggest thing for me has just been being very open and explicit about having a conversation about it and then acting on that information. So whether that is a town hall or sitting down with people individually, or we do a survey every quarter. We do a variety of other surveys, but we do internal surveys every quarter, and then we take the feedback from that and action it. I think it's really creating that open environment to have a dialogue and a conversation about what's working and what's not, and then action the things that you can from that. Because I can't tell you that, if you have great snacks in your kitchen, that will create culture, or if you are inclusive in a very specific and certain way, that'll create great culture. It's more that you just have to have the conversation and ask the team, what do you want? What are you missing? What's feeling good? What's not? And then act on it.
Yeah, it's kind of that one-on-one communication that kind of anticipates as the company gets bigger, because there's layers of management, there's activity, and just the sheer number of people becomes hard to have a one-on-one with 90 people.
Yeah. I'd say actually the one thing we do really specifically that's been pivotal is we do an internal, or we call it an employee NPS or an ENPS. And that's, you ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend a friend or colleague to work here? And they give us that score of 1 to 10. The 9s and 10s count as 1 point. The 7s and 8s count as 0. And anything below a 7 is a -1. And then you average that up. So for example, I think Apple's NPS amongst customers is about 75. So our internal NPS is 83, which we're super proud of. It's a really high score for this metric. But when people give the score, they also provide commentary. And so we're kind of, I think by there's that thing of what you measure is what you'll change or move. I don't know
what matters. Yeah.
but yeah. So we measure it and we set goals around it, and that forces us to kind of take action on that feedback to maintain that.
And is there any particular function that's harder than others? Sales, marketing, engineering?
To keep happy or to hire?
or to keep
or
happy.
To do? To keep happy? No, I think it fluctuates a lot based on where we invest efforts, where we have strong leaders. Strong leaders is a big piece of it. Like they say, people quit. They don't really quit companies, they quit managers. So usually if there's a concern on the NPS side, there's an issue with management in that team. Sometimes it's often other things as well, but it's usually looking at the people who are leading the team and then getting them the help and the coaching to make them a better manager, or figuring out how they can help their team better.
Well, that's it, because engineers usually want interesting stuff to work on. That's what drives them. It's the fun things. And a lot of things in an established company sometimes aren't that fun, right? They're like changing the color of the button or the shape of it. And I'm sure out of that 5,000, there's probably 5 that are a lot of fun to work on.
Well, we still have a ton of fun on the day-to-day and the stuff we're building. It's pretty exciting. But we also do a thing called Blue Sky Week. So once a quarter, we spend a full week for the team gets to do basically whatever they want in some innovative way. We give them a bunch of kind of materials and opportunities, and they just take their own ideas and run with it. And the stuff we build in that week is pretty amazing.
Cool. And how about as far as you had to do it all over again? What would you have done differently?
That's hard to say because it's working out really well. So I'd worry if I change anything, then
ripple effect.
I'd say probably the biggest thing is in the first 3 years, we were a lot slower. So the original idea was to do exactly what we're doing now, but we didn't have the manpower or the person power and the technology to really do that all, which was a system that anyone could come and sign up for, create their own website, their own course, all, take payments and interact with students all on their own under their own brand. We wanted to do that initially, but we really didn't have what it took to do it initially. So we tried a bunch of other business models, and then that led to, we were always kind of moving in this direction because we knew it's where we wanted to go, but we got a bit sidetracked, I think, and spent a bit too long on a bunch of those different business models. I think if I'd go back, I would have jumped into this immediately. Although I have to recognize that, the timing when we first started wasn't quite perfect. I think it was really only 2-3 years in where things took off in this space. And I think we could have been on that a bit sooner, but that would probably be the biggest thing, is go back and move a bit faster. If it was me with what I know now, going back and start over, there'd probably be a million decisions day to day that I'd be making more, differently now, having learned what I have.
Yeah.
Certainly about hiring in the early days. We got super lucky with some of the people we hired in the early days, but one thing is I would have put in place much, much faster, a much more rigorous system and science behind how we hire, because that makes such a fundamental difference in how you're building a company.
That's it. And if you look at startups, the science kind of shows that timing is the critical element. If you're too early and you have a great product, you just run out of money and energy. If you're too late, you're just a has-been and you're trying to chase it. It's the people that really 3 to 5 years before it peaks have a great product. And I think you obviously had the timing. Maybe you were a little early, but it worked out well for you. And because you're dependent on other technologies, payment, web technology, servers, and, getting people. Because the whole online training systems changed dramatically 2 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. So we definitely could have been a little earlier, but we were pretty much in a sweet spot for the timing.
Well, where do you see the market going? To the mobile, to microlearning, to communities?
There's a bunch of interesting trends. Mobile definitely, there's more and more, everything is more mobile. Although I still see people when they really want to learn either, sometimes there's that just consuming it audio wise in the car. But a lot of time it is still, sitting with the laptop at home or at work, actually engaging with it. So mobile is definitely one thing. I think the one trend I see is kind of more and more custom, if you will, where everyone really, and I don't know that this is new. I think it's actually been a problem with the conventional LMS or learning management system since they started, is that each new client wants a very custom way of doing things. And I think we have some good ways of solving it, because we make it quite customizable, and we're trying to make that more and more so. But that's definitely one thing, is everybody having their own vision of what education is and how they want it to go and how they want to interact between the content, the students, and the instructors. So that's an interesting one as well. We've seen, there was, I think, a course out of MIT actually on AI, where one of the teaching assistants was an AI. And I think at the end of the course, the students did not know. They hadn't figured it out yet. So there's some interesting applications and opportunities there. And then we're looking a lot at sort of big data of analyzing. We're lucky enough to have tens of thousands of course creators, millions of students, millions of courses, hundreds of millions in course sales. And so we can look at the data across that, and we're really starting to learn some interesting things about what works, what doesn't, and trying to build our product in a way that automates a lot of that stuff for people, or gives them the advantage of millions of data points to make their courses better. So actually leveraging that, I think will make it a lot easier for people.
Yeah, because I've learned a lot. I originally thought I could just put the course up there and people would just use it. And then I did office hours, where it was a group meetup on Zoom, and then record it, put it into the course. And then I moved to adding one-on-ones that would be like this, screen share, and then put it into the course. So everyone learns a little differently, and especially moving from a podcast to a course, because a podcast is passive consumption of content. A course is active consumption. You just can't play it in the car. You got to like watch it, do it, apply it, get some feedback, see how other people are doing it. So, I'm trying to figure out also, what's the best way of connecting with my audience, and which are salespeople, which don't have the longest attention spans.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to other CEOs out there, as far as, if you really want to compete and win in a new, highly competitive market space?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just getting started, I'd say, one thing is making sure two things. I usually try and put, or I recommend people would put marketing first, at least thinking about it. So often, even if someone's creating a course, I'll say, write your sales page first. Before you do anything else, do your sales page and see if anyone's actually interested in it. It's one great way of really validating that all the work you're going to do to, say, create the course or the product actually makes sense and people want to buy it or are interested in it. And if you refine that language a little bit through testing it a bit, you can then go and build the course that actually matches the sales thing. What I find sometimes is people, if they build the product or the course first and then they go out to sell it, they actually start refining the sales message to match what people want, but the product they built doesn't match that. So, and the same goes for software or hardware or anything you're building. If you can get that marketing piece right, and you've validated that you have a marketing channel to actually reach people via, that people are interested in this, then when you go build product, you're not wasting your time. It makes it a lot easier to kind of build and iterate quickly. And I just hate to see anyone go kind of build something in the closet for a year and then come out and say, all right, who do I sell it to and how do I sell it? So that's one. And then early days as well, sort of after that, is really, really focus on getting product market fit and making sure that you feel this pull from the market. And it was a noticeable point in time for us that went from getting on the phone and calling everyone and sort of fighting for every deal to just the market pulling us in the right direction and saying, great product, I need one or two things from it, but I'm ready to use it right now. Sounds awesome. Can you add a couple of things? So they were really telling us what to build, which made it easier. And they were jumping on and using it right away. So that when you feel that product market fit pull, that's something you should be shooting for before you worry so much about scaling. It's pretty dangerous to try and scale until you have that, or almost impossible, I think.
Cool. And where can people go to connect with you and learn more about Thinkific?
Well, on social channels, it's all at Thinkific, Thinkific, or thinkific.com is probably the easiest ways to kind of reach out and get in touch with us.
And one last question. How'd you come up with the name?
Yeah, that's a good one. My brother and I spent a couple days sort of brainstorming, trying different ideas. It was a blending of think and terrific. My brother had a previous startup called Bodyific that was all around like building communities around health and fitness and stuff. And so we thought that was an interesting idea. And then I think more recently, we've had a few people say it sounds like Think If I Could. So there's that's kind of an interesting thing we've been thinking about doing a marketing campaign around. But yeah, originally it was just Think meshed with terrific.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, I want to make sure you're checking out b2brevenue.com. That is where you can get a free copy of an ebook that I did. It's a real ebook. It's not a fluff book. It shows and talks about how companies make buying decisions and how you can influence that from both a marketing and a sales standpoint, how to find all the people that are in the decision path and what they need to see, know, and touch and feel before they make a product selection. If your team needs some coaching, some help, some training, some systems, some processes that do work today, because we know what doesn't work, or you know what doesn't work, I'll show you what does work and how to connect and get into pretty much any account. It includes deal coaching and content community, and I can customize it for your particular company. Just go to b2brevenue.com, look under training, schedule a call with me. We can talk it over, or just sign up. You can pay per month or all at once, whichever makes most sense for your budget. Also, I put out videos pretty much daily on LinkedIn and on YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's Brian G. Burns, and on YouTube, it's Brian Burns Sales. Just search for that if you like to consume some video content. And if you see me on LinkedIn, please put a comment and a share and a like on some of the videos. I really appreciate it. I've got a company page for each podcast. This one, the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, where I put both content and humor videos out daily. And tell a friend about the podcast. Really appreciate you listening. Check out the show notes for all the partners and the connections you can make there, the coupon codes for the products to evaluate them, see if they're a right match for you. And we'll see you next time.